Welcome everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're continuing our Security Analysis 101, which is the basics of cybersecurity for the exam CySA Plus by CompTIA. And this is Cybersecurity Analysis 101 is pretty much the equivalent of chapter 1, and we'll be continuing this section with building a secure network. Without further ado, let's get started. Forgive me for a little bit of the typing errors. I was in a rush, but we're going to go into building a secure network. To help mitigate the risks of organizations, network infrastructure involves building a secure network. This is important, very important, right? Building a secure network includes network access controls and network perimeter security controls, etc., etc. Okay, so we're going to go into network access controls. So network access controls, or a NAC solution, helps achieve two objectives: limiting network access only to authorized individuals and making sure that the systems accessing the IT systems meet basic security parameters, right? So one, we're making sure that the people who are supposed to have access to the systems, and that the systems themselves are secure within their environment. So 802.1x protocol. 802.1x is an IEEE standard. I believe it's the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers standard. It's a big organization that defines a framework for controlling access to a network based on the authentication of devices before they are allowed to connect. It's mainly used in wired networks like Ethernet switches, wireless networks like Wi-Fi access points. It acts as a gatekeeper, only allowing devices that successfully authenticate, usually with credentials or certificates, to access network resources. So for example, to give it this in layman's terms, a lot of enterprise environments, right? Big organizations. So your computer will be what you call a supplicant, and then you have an authentication area. It could be a third party, or it could be within, usually it's a third party, and then you have the network. So the certificates might be a PKI certificate, and we'll get into that, public key infrastructure. We'll get into that in later videos, but to dumb it down, your credentials or certificates might be keys or paperwork, electronic paperwork that your computer has or needs to have. Your computer might also need to be in a particular health status. It has to be healthy. And then the supplicant or your workstation will say, hey, I want to get on the network. And then the authenticator will look at your credentials, will look at the health of your computer. And if it's good to go, you'll get access onto the network. If you're not, it will allow you on the network, or it might isolate you. All right, and we'll get into that in later videos. So 802.1x continued, and this is again another definition, another breakdown, right? So as I said before, you have the supplicant, which is the client device. So it could be your phone, your computer, your laptop. You have the authenticator, the network device that enforces the authentication, and you have the authentication server, usually a radius server that validates the credentials. Process flow, as I said before, the device connects, the network kind of holds the connection, the device sends in its information, the authenticator looks at it, sends it to the authentication server. If it's verified, access is granted. If not, it's denied. And the common servers used for this authentication is radius servers. Also, it supports authentication methods like the EAP TLS, which uses certificates, or the EAP PEAP, which uses username and passwords for authentication credentials. Critical for enterprise Wi-Fi security and wired network security. So that's pretty much the technical explanation of what I just said. All right, now we're going to go into NAC solutions. So with NAC solutions, or network access controls, this is basically multiple different versions of it, right? So you have agent-based NACs, which requires a small piece of software or agent installed on each endpoint. Or you have agentless NACs, which inspects and verifies endpoints without installing anything on the device, right? And that's self-explanatory. You have in-band and out-of-band. So in-band setup is usually all the traffic flows directly through the NAC device. The NAC device acts as a gatekeeper, making real-time decisions about allowing, blocking, or restricting traffic. An out-of-band NAC setup is usually where it doesn't pass to the NAC device directly, but the NAC device monitors and manages the traffic indirectly, often talking to network switches and firewalls if it needs to close off something. And there's a chart that pretty much spells out or lists out the differences, the benefits and the cons, right? So you have traffic flow with the inbound that goes to the NAC appliance. Outbound, it goes around it. Speed of enforcement, immediate. Out of band is slightly delayed. Scalability is harder, obviously, because it's going through the NAC. Out of band, it's easier to scale because it's just monitoring, so on and so forth, right? Excuse me, a little bit of gas here. All right, so I think that's a repeat. Sorry about that. But on to the next one. Network perimeter security refers to the defensive measures that protect an organization's internal network from external threats coming in from the internet or other untrusted networks. Think of the network perimeter like the walls and the gates around a castle. It defines the boundary between the safe internal environment and a potentially dangerous outside world. Key goals of the perimeter security control is what enters and what leaves the network, detect and block unauthorized access attempts, protect sensitive data and systems from external threats, and segment and contain breaches if they occur. Right? So, instead of with perimeter security, it's just you're segmenting each part of your network, like subnets and stuff like that. A little bit more networking jargon that we'll get into. But, control and enters what leaves the network. You're detecting and blocking unauthorized attempts and protecting sensitive data. So you want to make sure that you're segmenting you're not having one big network or one big chunk of network, if that makes sense. Trying to dumb it down a little bit, right? You're not going to have one piece of the pie, right? You want to break down your pie, which is your network infrastructure, into smaller pieces so you can protect it easier. Basically, this is what network perimeter security is all about, right? You have a more fine-tuned, more compartmentalized network that you can protect, because there might be certain places in a network that might be more sensitive than others and whatnot. And again, you don't want to have a big chunk, because when you have a big chunk, you have a bigger surface area where bad guys can come and compromise your network, pretty much, right? Moving on, what is a network firewall? So a network firewall is a critical tool for perimeter security. It acts as a barrier that monitors, filters, controls network traffic based on a predefined security rules. At a basic level, a firewall decides whether to allow traffic, permit, block traffic, deny, or redirect or inspect traffic more deeply, and this is for more advanced firewalls, right? So we're going into the types of firewalls here. So you have packet filtering firewall, so it inspects packets based on IP address, port, and protocol. You have the stateful inspections, which tracks active connections and makes smarter decisions based on the session state. You have the next generation firewall, which adds deep packet inspection, intrusion prevention, application awareness. And I'm pretty sure this might come on your exam, because I've seen this all over the place. And in other cybersecurity exams as well. Your WAF, which is another key firewall you need to know. I mean, you need to know all of these, but I'm just pointing out the ones that may or may not have more frequency in the exam. So your web application firewall protects web applications by filtering malicious HTTP traffic. Your cloud firewall as a service deployed in cloud environments. Okay, moving on. How to analyze security risks. Evaluating risks are one of the most important processes that can be done for a cybersecurity risk program. It is important for analysts to understand the underlying technology, the data, and the external factors that can affect the IT infrastructure they are responsible for. Okay. My slides are messed up tonight. But anyways, we're going to move on to common TCP UDP ports. I'm not going to go too much in this because this is pretty much you either know it or you're not. Basically, the strategy that I'll use for this is that I associate the description with the port. Because once I know what the port's supposed to do, it's easier to stick. But these are like, the first 10 that I saw. Definitely you should know what SSH is 22. Telnet is 2353. DNS 80s or HTTP. 443 is HTTPS. 3389 is RDP. Also, you need to know whether it's TCP, UDP, or both. All right. Now moving on. Network segmentation is a practice of dividing a larger network into smaller isolated sections called segments or subnets. And this is going back to perimeter security. And this is a technique that a lot of network engineers use. So you're breaking down the big chunk into smaller segments or pieces called subnets. And this improves security and performance and management because instead of having a big chunk, it's smaller compartmentalized pieces that you can kind of granularly control and secure with varying securities and route and stuff like that. So each segment has its own security policies, traffic rules, access controls, reducing the chance that an attacker can move freely across in the entire environment. Segmentation limits who and can talk to each other inside of a network. So pretty much reiterating what I was saying earlier. So why is it important? It limits the spread of attacks. It enhances data protection. It simplifies compliance with laws, which is very important. And PCI, DSS, HIPAA, GDPR. If you're not familiar with those, we will definitely go into these later on. But those three, including more compliance statutes and laws, need to know these. Improves network performance, supports zero trust principles by default. All right. Common ways to implement segmentation. You have your VLANs, you have your firewall rules, your subnets, your SDNs, and micro segmentation. So your VLANs, logical separation of devices on the same physical switch. Your firewall rules are self-explanatory. Your subnets, self-explanatory to a point, and we'll go into it in a later lecture, if you will. Your SDN, advanced dynamic segmentation managed by software controllers, and microsegmentation, extremely fine-grained control, device by device, or even application by application isolation, common in cloud environments. Okay, and now we're going into deception technologies, right? In cybersecurity, deception technologies like honeypots, honeynets, and DNS sinkholes are used to detect, mislead, and analyze attackers without putting real assets at risk. Instead of just defending, these tools lure attackers into a fake system to study their behavior or block malicious activities. So, pretty much, these technologies kind of either deter or steer attackers to a fake environment or a fake asset that they try to take in. And this it has many uses, right? And we'll go into them. And one of the first deception technologies that you'll probably know or heard about is called the honeypot. It's a decoy system or service that intentionally distracts and attracts attackers to mimic real servers, databases, or applications, but it doesn't contain anything that's worth anything, right? Its key features is that it looks vulnerable and valuable to the attacker. It logs interaction attempts. It can alert defenders to attempted intrusions, and it's placed inside the edges of the network, inside or on edges of the network, right? A honeynet is just a network of honeypots, and it's pretty much doing the same thing, but on a bigger scale, right? And then a DNS sinkhole, also called a black hole DNS, is a server that intercepts DNS queries for known malicious domains and redirects them to a harmless address, preventing malware from contacting its control and command or command and control servers. Instead of allowing malicious domain resolutions, it returns a fake IP of 127.0.0.1. Stops malware communications, phishing, or botnet activity early, and is useful for early detection and infection containment. So this is, you know, a honey pot, but in more so a DNS form. You know, it's kind of self-explanatory, right? So, you know, there's a lot of attackers that can poison DNS tables. They can manipulate the DNS servers to, you know, run botnets or other attacks. And by having a sinkhole, again, you deter them to that sinkhole where they can't do any harm. And also, blue teamers and other cybersecurity analysts can take a look at it and kind of figure out where the attack is coming from. Okay, and here is the end of the video. Again, I apologize for the mistakes, the grammar mistakes. I'll try to work on them. A lot of the times I'm working these slides I'm creating these slides very fast, and I might overlook certain things, right? But as I have more time, I will definitely, you know, make sure my presentation is cleaner, because that's important for you guys to catch on and follow on and learn, right? So anyways, for my tangent and my apology, the review. So we went over network access controls, or solutions rather. We went over firewalls. We went over perimeter security, common TCP UDP ports, and I would suggest that you guys look, you know, the ChatGPT it up or Google it up and study those, right? A lot of the textbooks, especially the one by Cybex, would have pretty much a comprehensive list of the common one that you should know. Network segmentation and deception technologies. If you guys have any questions, leave it in the comment section below. And any other criticisms and whatnot, you can leave it in the comment section below. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video, and I hope you guys learned something. Peace out.